Lisa.
Okay, it is 6:30 and it is May 11th, calling the Parking Committee meeting to order. Um, Moving on to item number 2, comments, suggestions, petitions from residents in attendance for items not on the agenda. Hearing none, we'll move on to 3, parking regulations on Rosedale Avenue. I think we have an attachment or a PowerPoint for that. I think we want to scroll down to where there we go. John, I'm going to turn this over to you.
Thank you.
And I think we maybe even want to go down one more, right, to where we see the yellow as well on there we go. Thanks.
So as you recall, last month we talked about this location in the borough, and the residents had come to us and requested that the south side of Rosedale Avenue, which is currently no parking anytime, be changed to parking, being available for parking, at least during the time when parking is otherwise restricted on Wednesdays 8 to 11, so about 3 hours a week. And this is a unique traffic pattern in the borough because you have these vertical alleys which are not directional, and you have the streets which are directional. And then the piece of Rosedale Avenue that's from Adams to Franklin is a two-way street. And then all other streets basically in this neighborhood function as one-way streets. There's about, I counted 54 living units here in the neighborhood. And what's important to note is that the lots are 20 feet wide. And 20 feet also happens to be about the length of a normal parking space. Parking spaces are 10 by 20. So a lot of residents here have provided for parking on private property off of their alleyways. Some have, some haven't. But yeah, you can do the math in your head pretty quick. When you're talking about a lot that's 20 feet wide, you can really only fit one car on a street parked perpendicular, so to speak, to the lot or parallel with the street. But I did want to mention that a lot of residents here have taken advantage of their private property in the rear of their properties and are parking sometimes two vehicles on their property as well. I didn't do a count of all that. So everyone's been complimentary about some of the charts and maps that we've been showing in parking committee. So I decided to do a really basic one to set the bar back low again. And I want to thank Jason Barnes and Al Venatelli for their time to resolve this issue. We went out and tested turning movements with the borough trash truck. And this was a kind of a hands-on approach to getting to the solution rather than sending it to the traffic engineer and getting a bill from them. We just drove the truck around the neighborhood to see where we had pinch points and where we had to make sure we regulated or we indicated those spaces as no parking. So there's no legend on this map, so I'll just describe it to you. The blue areas are no parking because you're not allowed to park within 25 feet of an intersection. So those are already regulated by your ordinance. The red area on Rosedale from Adams to Franklin on the south side has to remain no parking because you got two-way traffic there. The other red areas that you see are areas that the truck needs to make those turns, and they're about 50 feet long. And we do, and I really appreciate Dennis and the neighbors and Lisa and the committee having us take another look at this, because what we found was we could fit some more cars in the yellow areas on the street. And the only question we couldn't settle internally was whether or not those yellow areas should be available for parking 7 days a week, except Thursdays 8 to 11, or make them available to park in just 3 hours a week on Wednesdays 8 to 11. In other words, to provide relief at that time of the week where As everyone in Westchester is aware, because we regulate most of our streets this way, certain times of the day you do have to move your car from one side of the street to the other to facilitate public works activity. So that's the question we posed to the committee, whether or not, because we couldn't settle it internally, whether or not you want that parking available in the yellow areas 7 days a week, or just that 1 day a week when the residents requested some relief.
Thanks, Sean. Mr. Flynn?
Ms. Dorsey, I hate to be I know the residents need parking there, and that's why I suggested that we take another look at it to see what we're going to put. I know people's habits because I have a lot of bad ones. I can tell you that on East Rosedale Avenue, even if we allow parking on East Rosedale Avenue, and we have those red lines that people aren't supposed to park, I'll buy you breakfast the first time we allow them to park there, because everybody's going to take full advantage of East Rosedale Avenue. And I understand the turn ratio of the trash truck. I'd hate to see a fire truck try to make a turn there, because it won't be able to happen. And it looks like I'm guessing we're going to allow maybe 10 parking spots, Mr. Metric. Would you say in the yellow spots?
That's a good estimate, Mr. Flynn. Maybe 10 to 12.
Okay, so I don't know how we're going to mark the street. Signs won't work because there'll be too many signs. But the problem is, I can guarantee you they're going to park at 727, and they're going to park at 726, and they're going to park at 729, and just fill that entire street up because it's human nature. And then they're going to get tickets, and they're going to be twice as mad. They're going to be madder than a hornet. There's no easy answer on this guy.
Thanks, Mr. Flynn. I guess, my perspective is we don't not try to find a remedy for fear that, people are going to disobey it. That's just human nature, as you said. Mr. Allen?
Can you remind me what that time was that the residents requested relief? I know it was during a specific.
We're looking for uniformity throughout the borough. So most places around the borough are 8 to 11. I think the residents requested 7 to 12 when this was originally proposed.
I'm just thinking about which day of the week it was.
Wednesday, I believe.
Okay, so it does option B. It would seem like option B doesn't help with that then. Is that correct?
What's option B? I'm sorry.
Option B was allow parking in yellow areas from 8 to 11 on Thursdays only.
Yeah, I think that's a typo. It should be Wednesday.
Yeah, that's a typo. Yeah.
Okay.
So on Wednesdays at 8 to 11 and on Thursdays at 8 to 11, the parking supply there is cut in half momentarily.
Okay. Okay, so that's okay. Well, that makes a lot more sense to me now. And then I guess the other question I have is, in terms of having, so I guess we're concerned about having cars on both sides of East Rosedale because of large vehicles, and that it would only take one resident to park where they're not supposed to clog up the streets. Is that where we're at right now? Am I understanding that right?
Correct. It's a 25-foot wide cartway, so it really wouldn't work to have parking on both sides of the street where you have two-way traffic. you would have to have parking utilization be really low, and it's a type of street design where you can't have more than like 40% of the parking utilization, because you need people to kind of play chicken and duck in and out and get around each other.
Okay. And trying to say, we couldn't do this. I'm trying to see. I mean, what if we did the two? This is really splitting hairs here. But if we did the two yellow slivers that are in the one way, I mean, wouldn't that would help with that, right? Because then it would be similar to Adams Street, right? Which is one way and a similar width with parking on both sides of the street.
Could we go back to the map and you could explain what you're saying to me again?
Yeah, so the middle yellow spot and the one to the right or to the east, those two are on East Rosedale where it's only one way.
Correct. And so is the third one to the west of this in the middle.
Oh, all three are? It's one way for all three there?
Correct.
So why would we need to, for the yellow zones at least, would there be a need to play chicken if it's one way?
No.
Okay. So I mean, I don't think. I mean, in my mind, I think to me that makes option A makes some sense to me. I think that gives the most options to the residents. Unless I'm missing something.
Ms. Dorsey, Bernie Flynn?
Yes, Mr. Flynn.
I just had a thought. There's a curb along East Rosedale Avenue, and we can actually paint the curb red.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're parked in the red, you get a big ticket. And the residents would be able to tell in the breaks in the line where not to park because it'd be red. I mean, it's a gallon of paint. And we're giving them 15 parking spots. You know, if you park in the red area, you deserve a ticket.
I mean, I think option A. I mean, I don't know if Sue Bain, if you want to correct me about this, but I think option A would probably be the best option for the residents there.
Nick, thank you very much. Two of my neighbors are also on the line, Dennis Halliger and either Mark or Isabel Maddie. I'm going to give them the option to speak first, but our original request was one day, not 7 days, due to emergency vehicle access. So, Dennis or Mark, do either of you want to talk?
Yeah, I just want to add to the reason about more of the overflow I had not heard of to this point is because on Adams Street, at least on Adams Street, we have like 3 or 4 houses that are college students, rented to college students. And that's on that one day is what makes even worse about the overflow of cars. Some of them do park in the alley behind their houses, but a lot of them park on the main street along with their homeowners. And so I haven't heard of that from nobody yet bringing that up. And that's what I'm saying. It's such a problem for homeowners to get a parking because of the college kids who do get permits legally and compete against them. We only are talking about one day, not 7 days, just one day at the very minimum from the 8 to 11. So we're not really asking for much here, just a little bit of relief. And as I heard, if people park on the red area, they deserve a ticket, you know? So this shouldn't be that complex. I just think it should be very simple. It's a simple request. That's all I have to say.
And
So,
I totally,
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Go
I
ahead.
totally agree with you. The way that I was saying what I said was, you know, you asked for one day, and I mean, I would imagine it'd be better to give you 6.5 or more than that. So I'm just saying that, yeah, like why not give you even more?
Yeah, I agree with you, Mr. Allen. If we're going to paint the curbs red, we're protecting the fire department, and we're protecting the ambulances, and we're protecting the public works from making those turns coming down the, so they can make those safety turns and not hit somebody's car. And You have
too big in
12,
here.
15 parking spots.
Ms.
I
Rainey,
think
go ahead.
we have an emergency services employee who lives in the borough. I know he is very concerned about emergency access. And I think if we're talking about more than the 1 day a week that we asked for, we need to have emergency vehicles come down here and test drive that. They're going to come straight down Rosedale off of Franklin. And they're they don't want to have parking on both sides of the road. They need more than what is going to be a very narrow way. So I'm good with the Wednesday. I kind of was looking for either 7 to noon or all day Wednesday because it's a very narrow the yellow space are narrow. You're going to be juggling cars. You've got people who are going to be running out their doors at 11 o'clock going, I got to move my car. I got to move my car. And, there's going to be all kinds of fidgeting going on. So my vision would either be, and I understand you want to keep it with, everything else in the borough. So I understand the 8 to 11 theory. I would ask for then a full day so that there's not quite the scrambling and traffic jam and car congestion in a very limited tight area. But I think Dennis and I are in agreement. We only appreciate the offer of additional, but let's see how it works.
This is Mark. This is Mark. This is Mark, Mark Matty, the other neighbor in the area, and I would agree that just the 7 to 12 would be optimal. Maybe Wednesday and Thursday for both days where the parking restrictions are, but Wednesday definitely, and not 24 hours. No, and I think that's consensus of a number of residents in the area that Dennis and I have spoken to.
The Ms. Dorsey.
Yes, Mr. Flynn.
Well, we're back to the drawing board a little bit again because catastrophe doesn't have a timetable. So we may even lose more of the yellow parking spaces if Fame Fire Truck can't turn on South Penn or Yarnell or whatever. We may have to remeasure the swerve distance,
Yeah,
for the fire truck.
So I think, if the residents are willing to wait to do the emergency vehicle test, we can go back and I hear 8. I hear Wednesday and Thursday for when there are no parking restrictions, which makes sense. Again, I think, from a consistency standpoint, residents generally throughout the borough are 8 to 11. And Sean, I don't know if you have any thoughts.
Just so everyone knows, we did have a fire engine down there to test the turns.
Okay,
Too.
so that's been done.
Jason can drive a fire truck too.
Okay, great.
He's
Thank you for
very
that. I
talented.
thought it was just a trash truck, so thank you for that.
All right, then
so-
we're good. Yeah.
I'm sorry.
I was saying that if the emergency vehicles can make the turn, then the yellow is good to go.
Right. And I hear the residents, it appears that they're more interested in the 1 day or 2 days with the time limitation versus all day. I would make a recommendation then, Mr. Metrick, and I'm looking for your feedback here for, Wednesday and Thursday, 8 to 11. That's not an option that's on the agenda, but, thoughts there?
Well, at least it's not 7 to 12. And we don't have to go order new signs to create a completely different regulated area. That's a bonus. I guess personally, I was arguing for the 7 days a week because it increased parking supply way more than option B did. So.
Yeah, but I'm with you there, but I hear the residents saying they're not really interested in that. I'm not sure. I guess, you know,
It's
that,
only going to bring in people from
Yes.
out of the neighborhood. We fear.
right.
Yeah, we already have a problem with overflow parking coming in from other areas. So, and it's really only Wednesday that we are really crunched.
You have a
Thursday,
parking
we
supply.
have
Why don't you want to have more
the
supply?
availability on Rosedale.
I'm sorry, I thought I heard Mr. Maddie say Wednesday and Thursday, since there are no parking restrictions on both those
Yeah,
days.
it would be nice, but as Sue says, Wednesday's the more important day. I just said it would be
Okay.
nice for both days of the street cleaning on Penn and Adams, but Wednesday is the more necessary.
Okay. So Mr. Flynn and Mr. Allen, recommendation to go with option B with the modification to Wednesdays from Thursday.
I agree with that, and I think we should paint the curb red. So
I
they know
agree.
where to park.
What, Bernie,
Mr.
what's red paint have to do with anything?
Oh, that's the turn ratio of the trash truck or the
Emergency vehicle.
the trash truck. And if people park in that turn ratio, we could have a major problem because the vehicles can't make the turn.
Yeah,
If
I
the
know.
curb's painted
We
red,
can't-
if the curb-
We can't regulate paint colors on curbs. We put the signs up, whatever the signs are, the signs are.
but the problem is you'll have 5 signs on one street.
I understand. I'm just trying to, our expectations are not,
Can we table the paint conversation?
it's not going to be reality. You can't put paint on the ground and then send parking enforcement people after to enforce, colors of paint on curbing. That's not what they do.
If I might, normally what occurs in areas like this is there's signage that's put up that says no parking between signs. And the two signs they're pointed to each other essentially. And that's how we do it. We could paint the curbs. The problem with the painting of the curbs is you can't see them in the wintertime. So, come December 1st to about middle of March, it's like you've got nothing. So you have to have the signs out there.
Michelangelo never had problems painting in the winter.
Mr. Allen, are you?
Yeah, sure.
okay with option B?
I think, 2 minutes ago, I don't think I understood your point about overflow parking, and that makes total sense to me. I was a little bit confused as to why you wouldn't want more parking, but I totally understand where you're coming from with that now. And after all, you are the ones that, did the legwork. So I'm more inclined to go with what you would want in this situation then. So I'm happy to recommend this as well.
Okay. Any other comments on option number 4? I'm sorry, item number 3? Okay, we're going to move on to item number 4 on the agenda. and that is the extension of residential permit zone on the 200 block of Lacey Street. And I am going to turn this over to Mr. Metric. I also am going to need to drop from the meeting in about 5 minutes. And Nick Allen has agreed to graciously take over for me. Thank you.
Awesome. All right, I'll move quickly. This was petition for residential park extension of residential parking permit zone A. Was submitted by residents on the 200 block of Lacey Street. There are only 2 living units on this block, and so although it was only signed by 2 households, that's everybody on the block, so they got 100%. There's 2 living units. There are 2. If we can just go to the end analysis, what we did was we went out and did a utilization survey over those dates during those time frames. We found that utilization was around 60% in the mornings and afternoons, and then got a little busier at nighttime. 80% utilization is kind of your break point where there may not be a space available, or you may end up driving around the block looking for spaces. So you're pretty close to 80% for overnight utilization. And keep in mind, we don't have this survey was done when your students aren't in town. So although the survey says there is enough supply to support, if you scroll down, please. On the 200 block of Lacey Street, you only have 2 dwelling units, so the parking demand is 4. You have 2 parking spaces that are provided off-street behind one of the units. So the on-street demand generated by the residents is only 2 spaces. Although you can fit 2 cars with the utilization and as a result of the survey, you're pretty close to 80% there on the overnight, and I think that was part of the narrative that the residents sent in along with the request, that it's more difficult at night. That's true. There's more utilization at night. Although we're meeting this demand of just the 2 spaces, it might be worth it making this a zone A. I don't know what the borough typically does in these kinds of requests, but if you were to make this a zone A, we would like to revisit this and do the survey again, maybe in about 4 or 5 months' time, because it's going to take a while for people's parking habits to adjust. And it'll be interesting to see what happens when students come back to town.
Great. And would this just be the south side of the street? Would be, or is there parking allowed on the north side of the street?
It is not.
Okay, gotcha. I mean, I personally don't have an issue with this.
Mr. Flynn?
No issue at all.
There was one more fact I wanted to share with everybody too, that in addition to doing the count of cars, the parking enforcement manager went out and ran license plates on a couple of these spot checks. And I don't know which ones he did, which date he was there, what time he was there, but he only found 1 vehicle that was a Zone A parking permit. So all the other vehicles that were parked there were not Zone A, didn't have Zone A permits. So presumably, if you made this a Zone A, those cars would go somewhere else in the borough.
The other factor I'd add, these are the residents, Justin and Megan, hello everyone, is we really just don't have any other place to park as well. So even I know we were talking a lot about street cleaning before, there is nowhere else for us to go because we are not eligible for the permit. So when street cleaning happens on that one side of the street we can park on, we actually have nowhere to go at all. So that if we were part of the zone, we could then park on the other on Franklin and, actually have a legal place to park at all times.
And to make it not just about, obviously we submitted the application and our neighbors obliged because they have off-street parking, but it would be an extension of Zone A as well, though. So like the folks on North Franklin Street around the bend there, who, when one of their side of the streets obviously is on the street cleaning day, they would have somewhere to go that isn't basically required to be moved by about 7 a.m., whether it's in the, if you park in the Public Works parking lot, you have to move by 7 a.m., or as well as some of the businesses in that corner of town also allow you to park, but request you move by 7 a.m. So again, it is just a little difficult, especially in this COVID age that we're in. A lot of people are working at home, obviously, but yeah, it really is more of a problem than I think these numbers are even showing when the students are fully back in town in a non-COVID time as well. So thank you for the consideration.
And just as a point of reference, can I ask where you end up if there is no parking?
Yeah, so a lot of times it is in that that business lot in the corner. Or,
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to get you to admit to parking anywhere you should. But
Yeah, it's
just I know like where you end up is where
If we
probably
have
these
more
other people will end
enforcement
up.
down
So.
that time, I'll be back on this meeting to
Yeah,
complain to you.
Okay.
it's
Okay, great. And just to make sure I'm understanding the paperwork here correctly, it says, so when it says on-street parking demand on block 2, does that mean that we're talking about 2 spaces here? Or is
Correct.
it more than that? So it's just 2 spaces being added to area A?
No.
Okay.
We're saying that the amount of dwelling units that need on-street demand on that block amounts to 2 spaces.
Okay.
If we did this on a block that had more dwelling units, there'd be bigger numbers everywhere.
Okay.
So this is a little bit of a unicorn.
Gotcha. I mean, I personally don't have an issue with doing this. So I'm happy to move this forward. I think Mr. Flynn, you said the same thing.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
And Ms. Dorsey says she's okay with this as well. So we can move this forward on a 3-0 recommendation to full council then.
thank you guys.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for bringing it up. And then we can move on then to number 5, which is our director's report.
Yeah, thank you. While it's loading up here, I will breeze through the first part of the report because I'm going to touch on the usual. Go back. I want to go back to that graph that was before. Yeah. We're going to talk a little about the parking garages. Next slide. There you go. Nope, too far. I think there's one of these for Bicentennial and one of these for Chestnut, and you see the same sort of pattern where it's decreasing usage over the weekends and a peak during the work days. But the good news is that the trend line is up. After being kind of flat in March, April, occupancy is trending upwards in both garages. So we can go on to keep going. And I didn't want to spend a lot of time here. The only thing really to note here is that, like in Chestnut, the typical midday utilization when we weren't dealing with pandemic was right around 80–85%. And so we still got a ways to go. I think, Mr. Flynn, you mentioned that earlier tonight in another meeting. We still got a ways to go in terms of occupancy, but we have some positive trends that Mr. Friedman will talk about next after I'm done. We're still about half of what normal, but after a sluggish March, occupancy is up. So next slide, please. These are the financials that we go over every month. Good news, we had another above average revenue month in terms of what I was expecting to see this year. Again, strong parking meter revenue number there at 110,000 for the month. That is, it's less than April 2019. It's about half of what April 2019 was like. But I still think we're doing better than we expected we would be at this point in the pandemic. Enforcement is chugging along and generating violations. Those violations are being paid. That's outpacing the budget. And our garage revenue is tracking right about where we expected it to be budget-wise through the first 4 months of the year. So bottom line, we're about $17,000 behind budget through the end of April, which is not bad because, next slide, please. We were really thinking we were going to stay below this red line well into July and August. And now we've had 2 consecutive months where we're above the red line with our actual performance. So what I expect to see is some decrease because it's happened every year in May and June. Maybe this year's different. Who knows? Hopefully everything about this year is different. But we'll probably see some decrease in that number through May, June, kind of a slower summer, and then things really do pick up again August, September, and that's when I expected really the borough to make hay in terms of parking revenue in general, but we've already beat our budget number the last 2 months. So that's very, very good news. I just wanted to share that with you all. The last thing I wanted to spend most of my time talking about is the work we've been doing internally to figure out to make a decision about our parking technology upgrade. We currently have a mixture of single space meters. Those are the one picture on the left, and the multi-space meters on the right. We have about 600 of the single space meters and about 17 of the multi-space meters. Meter on your left costs about $600 to buy, and the meter on your right costs about $8,000 to buy. But the operating expenses for the multi-space meter really come home, really pay off when you are able to swap these out for clusters of single space meters, and especially single space meters that perform really well and generate a lot of credit card transactions, because we pay a 13-cent fee every time someone pays for parking with a credit card. At the multi-space meter, you simply pay a monthly fee for those things to work. So if you can find locations where you can swap a bunch or a cluster of these single space meters out for multi, it really does make sense, and the payback is pretty quick on these. So how do you figure all that stuff out? You use geographic information systems. So we have a point data set of all of our single space meters, and we loaded all of our transactional information from the platforms I'm showing you on this slide. Flowbird is our multi-space meter platform. Passport is the borough's platform for pay by phone capabilities. You can pay for parking with a phone app. And the IPS group is the back end of our single space meters. It's the cloud-based data platform for all those transactions. So we pulled all that out of there, and we attributed each of the dots on the map with transactional information from 2019. If you go on to the next slide, here's all our single space meters that have been mapped. That's all 600 of them. So the question was, in normal times, and we define that as January 1, 2019 through February 2020, that 14-month period right up to March of 2020 when we had the shutdown, we took the entire revenue that all of these meters made and attributed each meter to the revenue it earned, both from credit card and the pay by phone app. And geographic information systems let you visualize patterns that you can't otherwise tell by looking at numbers. So if you go on to the next map, we focused on the central business district only because that was where that's more consistent revenue zone. The university performs really well, but it takes about 90 days off in the middle of the year. So the university, even though it goes like gangbusters the rest of the year, because it has that 3-month lull, really doesn't perform as well as the central business district. And what this map shows you is not only the revenue that's coming in, but the proximity of those revenue generators to other revenue generators. It's a tool to identify clusters of high performance. And so when we drilled down into these locations, these darker shaded areas, we found that 3 of them that are circled are 3 borough-owned parking lots that currently use single space meters. So, and next slide. So what we're planning on doing with we're breaking out this swap into 2 phases. The first phase we want to complete by the end of this year. We're going to start with our 600 meters, but we are going to retire a probably, I don't have the number here on the slide, but we're going to probably take somewhere in the neighborhood of 50 to 60 of these out of service. And we're going to send 280 of them off to San Diego to get upgraded to new wireless technology. And then we're going to redeploy them in our single space meter system. And we're going to purchase 2 kiosks and remove one that we currently use in one of our borough parking lots, and then relocate those kiosks to the parking lots I showed you on the map before. So the total cost of the the single space meter swap is going to be $58,000. The total swap of the purchase of the kiosk is going to be a little less than $16,000 for a total all-in preliminary cost of $74,000 in fiscal year 2021 to get roughly about half of the way there in terms of swapping our single space meters to the new technology. We have until the end of 2022 to make this total swap before the tech that the single space meters are currently using sunsets. The number I want to draw everyone's attention to is highlighted in yellow, and that's the annual operational savings you're going to get, borough's going to get, from just deploying 2 more kiosks into its mix of parking management technology. So that's going to pay you back $5,200 every year for making this switch, this partial switch to multi-space meters. Next slide, please. And then in phase 2, we haven't identified exactly what the best locations are for the next swap, but we do know that we're talking about maybe another 5 or half a dozen kiosks to purchase, and those would be deployed largely in our downtown areas, and then we would swap the rest of the single space meters out. And our total operational savings going out in year 2 would be $8,800. And our total population of single space meters would be reduced from about 600 down to 518. These are preliminary estimates, but this is the direction we want to go in over the next, I guess it's 18 months that we're going to be swapping these out. What I feel more strongly about is what we're going to be able to accomplish in phase 1, and I'll give a more detailed proposal for council to consider at next month's meeting with some final numbers in there. But I wanted everyone to understand how we were solving this problem, how we were addressing the problem, and how important it is to have good geographic information to help us make better decisions about capital investment. I think that's all I have.
Great, thanks so much. I think, well, first thing I wanted to say, it was really nice to read the sentence, financial results are good. I don't think I've seen that since I've been on council. So that's good news, number 1. And then I guess maybe a little more like long-term question is, like, in your view, do you see us, like, would you think it makes sense to go to like a full kiosk borough, or is that not advantageous because of that like monthly credit card cost? We'd be behind the single space meters.
Well, certainly the sales team behind the multi-space meters would like to see us go to multi-space meters.
Right.
We do have there's kind of an inertia of existing investment in our single space meter technology, and I just think it's going to take a while for the system to evolve. I don't think we're in a position where we should be just swapping out and spending, $600,000. I think I would rather take an incremental approach to the swap and deploy these admittedly more expensive, but capital costs, but operationally more efficient devices in the locations that are the busiest, and see if it does actually improve our operations, and see if it does help us out. And there's a whole bunch of administrative issues with the back ends of these systems. Not a huge fan, honestly, of the software platform used to analyze the data that we get out of the multi-space meters, but maybe I just need to do a little more training to figure out what I'm doing.
Sure. I appreciate that insight. Yeah, I think it's a great plan, and I'm looking forward to moving forward with this. Mr. Flynn, any questions?
The faster we get the kiosks, because we found out down at the university at the Super Block, the kiosks actually paid for themselves in 8 months. So it was a good return on our investment down there. So the kiosks were are the way to go at this particular time. But thank you. It was a good presentation.
Are there any questions from anyone else in attendance tonight? Alrighty, great. Well, like always, really appreciate the input. I think it's a great presentation. I'm looking forward to seeing where we end up with all this stuff. So I think now we're good to move on to item number 6, which is the garage management monthly report.
Good evening. It's Forrest Freeman with Reef in Park. Walk through the numbers from last month. And we are continuing to see an upward trend in revenue, especially on the transient side. At Bicentennial, we were up 28% over March. And again, transient wise, Chestnut Street, we're about 8% higher month over month. So we're definitely seeing that uptick, as people are starting to come back in, as people are vaccinated, things are loosening up. So which is a good sign, and we're happy to be seeing it. Obviously, we're seeing much better numbers than the prior year. We did lose a monthly account, Access Group Inc. at Chestnut Street. So from a monthly perspective, Bicentennial has been relatively flat. I mean, we lost a few parkers at the beginning, but overall it's been pretty flat. We did see a much larger impact detriment actually at Chestnut Street between JLO Properties and Access Group. So we've lost a number of parkers year over year, which we do anticipate as we move forward. We'll pick those back up as we come out more so out of COVID. We'll see what exactly that is. Still operating with the same level of staff. Mr. Metric and I are actually walking through some different figures to determine where we're picking up our revenue, and determining when to bring back some additional staff or make the recommendation, I should say. One of the things I want to say, because in some degrees I was thinking and we were thinking, we kind of contradict when we talk about occupancy versus revenue. And occupancy really picks certain points of the day. So when we're looking at those numbers, it's a 10 to 4 and 6 or 7 at night, whereas obviously revenue is a 24/7 period. So that things don't, those two items don't necessarily correlate. So when I'm talking about our numbers going up and increasing, which they are because it's a revenue and a ticket count perspective, but from an occupancy perspective, we don't always see that based upon the periods of time when we're looking at occupancy. On the expense side, if we just move down a little bit and get to the bottom, we're continuing to limit our expenses. We're about $57,000 favorable to budget, $37,000 year over year. Always, we keep an eye on the cleanliness. Dina's doing a great job managing the facilities and just the day-to-day operations and how things are picking up. But I think overall things are looking very much better. And I think as we head into summer and we get those months in, and again more and more people are vaccinated, the restrictions loosen up even more. I believe with June, we'll just continue to see that uptick in income.
Great. Good news. More good news. That's exciting. I really appreciate the report. I don't have any questions. Mr. Flynn, anything?
Mr. Freeman, has the phone started ringing from our monthlies yet, asking about availability?
Hi.
We haven't, I mean, we don't have a waiting list at this point. I can get more information on that. I think we picked up in the month of April about 10 parkers at each location, if I'm not mistaken. So we are seeing a bit of an uptick in that, but I can definitely get some more information. But I wouldn't say they're ringing off the hook, but they are starting to ring.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions from anyone else in attendance tonight? All righty. Well, thanks so much. And looks like we can move on to item number 6, which is to approve the April 2021 Parking Committee meeting minutes. And I did not have any issues with that. Mr. Flynn?
No issues at all.
All righty. So I guess we can call that a 2-0 there. Is there any other business tonight? All righty, hearing none, we can go ahead and adjourn this meeting at 7:21. Thanks so much, everybody.
Thank you, Mr. Allen.